And here we go, everybody. We are stranded here on the live stream on Tuesday night, so it's time for someone send help, please. No, we're talking about Sam Raimi's latest film, the creator of The Evil Dead and Drag Me to Hell and Doctor Strange, The Multiverse of Madness. He has a new, yes, I know, we've got the one diehard fan, the defender of that movie on this panel. This is a special evening here, folks. He's got a new film out, and it was #1 at the box office this weekend, although it was a bit of a tussle between that and Markiplier's fascinating, truly independent film, Iron Lung. They were duking it out for top spot, and that's like an entire separate conversation, how that $3 million film with no studio, no distributor, and no editor, frankly, managed to almost take out one of the reigning kings of horror opening weekend. Tonight we're going to be talking about Send Help. Send Help? I'm sorry. Send Help. It's kind of a horror movie. It's kind of a comedy. It's a bit in Sam Raimi's wheelhouse, and it's also kind of not. My conclusion, and I know we're going to have a wide variety of opinions here on the panel tonight. I'm going to be at the extreme end of one spectrum and recommend humbly, or maybe not so humbly, Sam Raimi, please stop making movies that you don't write yourself. Because I had an impulse to leave in the middle of this movie. And at the very end, and Jeff can attest to this because he was sitting right next to me, I almost got up and yelled at the screen. So, with that said,
I was a little worried.
As you should be. But tonight we have, folks' identities are disguised here because I have not put up the folks' names. So here we go. I'm Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat. We have Jeff York of The Establishing Shot and Pipeline Artist. We have Katie Glidewell, the blonde in front. It was a Titan fight. Wait, what is that in reference to? Is that a different?
You know what's in reference to?
She didn't change it.
The Clash of the Titans 2 weeks ago. For some reason, StreamYard is not letting me change it, and I don't know why.
You can now.
Maybe it was a Titan fight like for all of 2026. Who knows?
Or there's a couple of Titan fights on this beach in Send Help, so it still works. I will
release
proclaim
the Kraken.
Yes. And then Mark the Movie Man Kracek. Or Kraken check? No, that doesn't work. Special Mud Productions.
Completely something else.
Oh, that sound. I'm sorry. That sound. After I said, I realized that could be really bad. So, Send Help. Jeff, can you lay out the synopsis of this film for us, please? Oh, but wait, before you do that, I feel it's a public service announcement to just let folks know. And I might post some reminders depending on how things go throughout the course of the hour. We had some fun jokers in our comments the last couple of weeks as we've opened up the stream to the lovely vertical format, which allows folks to see us on their phones without the hassle of a widescreen presentation. And as I've mentioned before, that has apparently welcomed in a lot of folks who like to spew nonsense and not contribute anything positive or constructive to the conversation. I don't mind people being negative about a movie, but at least, have something to say, contribute to the conversation, something we can react to rather than literal gibberish or bile that has nothing to do with anything that's going on in the show. So I will be testing out the banhammer this evening on the show. So, comments that I do not deem fit for air will not be aired. So just trying to save everybody a little bit of time before you set to typing, just know that we'll be on the lookout for that. So, hold on a second. We've got some comments. Okay. All right. We've got some already, and I don't know what to make of them. So I'm just going to plow right ahead. And Jeff York of The Establishing Shot, please, if you would be so kind, sir, synopsize Send Help for us.
Certainly. A female executive or almost executive at a company, a communications company, she's in strategy and planning, that she keeps reminding everybody, named Linda Little. If you think that's a little on the nose, it's a last name. It sounds like she's sort of a little peon, and she's sort of treated as that, but she's due for a promotion in her company because her former boss really liked her and wanted her to help out with bigger things because she was a workhorse and sort of the person to go to for all kinds of information and stats. He retires and leaves the company to his son, Bradley Preston, who is one of the typical sort of Nepo babies, the worst cliches, where he's, not good, not qualified, not smart. He's arrogant. He is boorish and sort of favors his friends, including one person who seems to have walked right out of the movie American Psycho with his suspenders and big, loud sort of shirt and tie, and then his sort of slick back hair. Anyway, that sort of depresses Linda, and she's really devastated by it. But she agrees to go along with them to a trip to Thailand for some business. And while they're on the corporate plane, she's humiliated all the further, as if this sort of demotion, if you will, isn't enough, when they get a hold of her audition tape for Survivor. And it's actually a pretty good audition tape if you've ever watched Survivor and seen the audition tapes. She's pretty clever about the way she says, hey, I know how to do this and that and the other thing. And gee, wonder if that's going to come in handy. Well, of course it is, because soon they're in a big rainstorm, the plane crashes, very few survivors. In fact, there's only two. Who do you think those two are? That's right, Linda and Bradley. Bradley's very injured with his leg sort of being torn up. Linda's not, but once they get on the island, she uses those survivor training skills that she was using to try to get on the game show to make themselves shelter and get food, and it sort of changes the power dynamic between them, much, of course, to the chagrin of Bradley, who's an arrogant sort of frat boy and, isn't used to sort of being told what to do and sort of boss around. And from there, hijinks ensue. So that's the essential sort of plot of it. And Rachel McAdams plays Linda Little, and Dylan O'Brien plays Bradley Preston. It's kind of a two-hand.
Yeah, I love that expression.
Yeah.
And very well put there, sir. Just to give folks an update, I've already banned 2 people from the live stream for posting nonsense and offensive content. So I am serious. I don't care how many people drop off or join. We're going to have a serious discussion about movies tonight. And we're going to go for it. So, although that thing doesn't like to make people go away, I'm banning people, but they're still showing up. Anyway, I don't understand this. So I'm just going to close comments and not look at them at all. All right. So, sorry about that, folks. Let's talk about this movie and where it fits in the Sam Raimi filmography. I think it's safe to say that we're all Sam Raimi fans. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, are we fans of all of Sam Raimi's filmography, or is it mostly like Evil Dead stuff? Because he's kind of strayed, into some more interesting territory beyond horror. But it was Spider-Man, of course. Basically, he's dabbled in Marvel Comics work. There was the Gift back in 2000.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of is. I admire his ability to take risks and go to different places. But are there folks here who are fans of his entire filmography, or just kind of the horror stuff that he's known for?
I like his broader. It's funny too, because I used to really be a big Raimi fan of all of his horror and loved his sort of comeback with Drag Me to Hell. But I think his Spider-Man movies are really good, and I think their influence on sort of shifting how these kind of that genre was done. I mean, we tend to think of it as the MCU sort of setting the template, and in many respects, of course, they did, if not setting it, certainly perfecting it. But I think what Raimi did with Spider-Man, and particularly with Spider-Man 2, which was even a better film, I think sort of was the real template, because I think it was character driven, even though there was action in it. It played on your heartstrings, as well as sort of the hair on the back of your neck for excitement. And some of it was very, very funny. And he had a good sense of sort of the cartoonishness of some of the ways to shoot stuff, albeit reined in. I think when he did Darkman, which was sort of a pre-run to his superhero world, while I liked Darkman a lot, it played a little bit more as a satire on things. I think Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2 and such played straighter. But here he does a little of both. There's some very cartoonish violence and some gore, some of that kind of stuff in there. But I think a lot of it is grounded in, or at least attempting to ground it in more character, like some of his more mature works, if you will. But then again, I thought Drag Me to Hell was grounded in character pretty well as well. So I think he's a filmmaker who's progressed. Here, I think he's progressed, shown some of that same progression that he's shown, while taking some steps back, as we could get into. But I think it's more of the script in many respects to keep it from being top shelf Raimi. But that might be a singular opinion amongst these four.
Yeah. All right. So as far as opinions go, well, actually, Mark and Katie, jump in if you want to share your kind of thoughts on Sam Raimi overall.
Go ahead, Katie.
I think his producing credits are a big mix, because just looking at the IMDb, some of the things he's been listed as producer are on some of my worst of lists the year they have come out. It is interesting that, besides Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, I mean, he did 50 Shades of Fright and then Ash and Rake, but then the major motion picture was Oz the Great and Powerful. So this is 13 years since he's had a major feature film, really. And then before that, it was Drag Me to Hell, and I really enjoyed Drag Me to Hell.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I love how he has these strong female performances, and even in Send Help and in Drag Me to Hell. But yeah, the Spider-Man 3, I think we all know that kind of that's a hit or miss too. Mainly
that's
a lot of miss.
Very polite way of putting it.
Yeah. I'm just trying to be real nice. But I mean, it's he directed The Quick and the Dead.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And see, that's where a lot of that cartooniness comes in. There's lots of things that seem like they're direct panels out of some sort of comic book. And then there's a certain energy and sensibility that goes with that, though. Some of the serious stuff, I think just personally, Sharon Stone was the only person who didn't realize that was supposed to be a little bit of a riff on westerns, not a real western. I mean, when you have the climax with Gene Hackman, hey, there's a hole in my chest, and you can see the sun peering through. It's why is Sharon Stone playing this like it's Lady Macbeth? It's but he's giving us clues that this is supposed to be kind of ludicrous, as he does in numerous places here as well.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, A Simple Plan is that's a fantastic film. And really, I know Billy Bob Thornton had been in films before that, but that one, I feel put him on my map. Well, I guess not, because he had done what's it called before then. But yeah, I mean, it's for me, it's hit or miss. I mean, I do love his early work. The stuff in the 90s, I think, is really good, but definitely his producing credits are
well, a lot of that was does that count all the because he had Ghost House Pictures, that was a thing for a while. That was kind of his production company. There were some not great things coming out of that, but
he did the remake. He was it's listed as producer on the remake of or the reimagining of Poltergeist 2015, and then The Grudge in 2022, and again I'm nope. And
yeah.
But I do love that he was in The Stand in the 90s. That was great. I just watched for the first time the imagining of that for the 2023 version and stuff like that. But overall, Sam Raimi is somebody that, he is that independent filmmaker that people strive to be, using his mom's car in the majority of his films, and having that, working with your friends and still working with your friends, and having that nothing budget in his first film to making having hundreds of millions of dollars. Do some of these need to be 100 million? Maybe not. But I don't know how the panel, but when we start talking about Send Help, it is going to be a positive for me. Yes, there are some misses in it. Yes, there are some reveals that it's really no one saw that coming. But yeah, it's going to be a positive film for me.
Okay, good. I mean, that's I want to have some diversity of thought here on the panel. That makes things fun. Mark, Sam Raimi, and then we'll get into the meat of the film.
Well, I don't always put a lot of weight in the producer credits a lot of times, because it can go from someone who was actually involved to one of 5 producers who just helped put some of the money forward, but didn't really have any input. I mean, we've seen Spielberg's name on a number of stuff over the years, and you can either tell if he's really been involved or if he's yeah, give him some money.
Yeah.
Get Transformers.
Use the
Sure,
green
go
light.
ahead, Michael Bay, make what you want. I don't care. I've got something else to work on.
Mhm.
So as far as producer credit goes, I don't usually use that as kind of a weight for it. I'm more of the director for Raimi, and I fully agree that Raimi does best with stuff that he had input on written wise, screenplay, whether or not he shares a credit for the screenplay or it's something that he completely written. I think he's more comfortable with it. It just naturally fits his style, obviously, but in general, I think he does better. But I've enjoyed the majority of his film. If I see that he's directed a film, I will watch it and I know what I'm in for. And you're right. He kind of comes from that school of filmmakers of why I'm glad you guys brought up Spider-Man and I won't be long, and the MCU, he did kind of lay a groundwork and give morsels of things that Feige and them took and ran with and go, these are the things that work from the Spider-Man films. We can build off of that and we can make this juggernaut that it was the MCU, because you can see those nuggets in there.
Especially his work was so popular that they brought back his incarnation or the Tobey Maguire version of Spider-Man for the last Spider-Man movie. So it's not like some of those, early pre-unification Marvel attempts, making Fantastic Four, the Punisher. No one's bringing. Although that'd be kind of fun to see Dolph Lundgren back as the Punisher.
I'd love to see Corbin's Fantastic Four make it into the multiverse. But
it's interesting, Mark. To your point, I don't think, just quickly, I don't want to interrupt too much. I don't think the two men who sort of laid the groundwork for really what has become the MCU, who are outside of that, did. I mean, starting with Richard Donner and Superman. I mean, obviously that was sort of point zero, because up until then you had things like, some of these terrible versions of stuff that were silly or not very well done on television and things like that. And he seriously cast it and treated it with a great deal of depth. And the second one is Raimi. I mean, Spider-Man, there was a long stretch between Superman and Spider-Man. And I think particularly with the second one, where he had more money to work with. And I don't know if there's a better superhero movie than Spider-Man 2, to be perfectly honest, one man's opinion. I think there are many that are in that same top tier, like Superman and certainly, Endgame and some of those kind of things. But, they give Jon Favreau a lot of credit for sort of starting all with Iron Man, which I think is also that top tier. But Raimi is one of the guys who sort of showed him how it's done, and he did it and is still doing it. Richard Donner has been gone for a long time, so good for him.
Well, and let's not forget Burton either. But Tim Burton in Batman, his 89 Batman, I'm throwing that in there, not just because I'm the DC shill, but that's another one of those where you had Superman, and up until that point, everybody's like, oh, you could just do Superman, and then he did Batman.
Just a minor smidge on that. While I think he gets credit because it was such the movie, none of those films got great reviews, and they were kind of a phenom, I grant you, but I think as far as the artistic merits of it, he did quite well. I would argue that the people who did the Batman animated series did better than him and sort of took his template and that's what I would refer to. I'm just saying, I think you're right about Burton, but
I love the animated series.
Denny and Tim did it better even on television.
Where I was going with this, though, is the fact that it was Burton, Raimi, and James Gunn. You have James Gunn partly because Raimi did Spider-Man. They took a chance on indie filmmakers. Burton was kind of that odd indie guy who made some really cool but quirky films, yet they gave him Batman in '89, and here you go. These indie guys.
It's also because he was able to take that quirky sensibility and translate it into mega hits. I mean, you got Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Beetlejuice. I mean, the runway was clear. So Raimi, though, really set that foundation of studios maybe giving an eye to those indie guys who made some popular films, but going, you know what, maybe we'll take a chance on it. And Raimi is one of those guys. No, not all of the films he makes are really solid bangers, but they're interesting ones, especially the ones that he writes or has co-written, but even the ones that he hasn't, you can kind of see his finger in it. But in those ones, he tends to be, and like in Send Help, more restricted from being Raimi in his direction.
Send Help. I'm mixed with it. Mostly a little more towards the positive, but I mixed with it because he did get some moments. But even with Spider-Man 3, we talk about it. We've learned many decades or so later that studio interference on Spider-Man 3 came in because 2 was such a hit in money. So they're just like, hey, it'd be great. We got to throw Venom in here. And you're just like, hey, you're paying my check, so there are some of those elements in it, but overall I enjoy Raimi's style. He's one that, he's one of those directors where if I see his name, I'm like, yeah, I'll go see it. And it may not be a favorite of mine, but I still find enjoyment in it. Yeah. And I found enjoyment in Send Help. It just all too familiar. And then when I saw who wrote the screenplay, it explains a lot. I think he makes the most of what he has. And after not being in the director's chair for 13 years, I think it ends up playing a bit safer than they could have. And that's what was disappointing for me.
Yeah.
Plus they marketed this film all wrong. This film
let's talk to me about that.
I agree.
This film was marketed more as a leaning into the horror thriller element, which really doesn't really come into it until the third act. I mean, you get a couple of moments in here, but the way the trailers portrayed this really made it feel like it was definitely going to be more cat and mouse, more back and forth in them trying to outdo each other, surviving on the island. And while you get some of that, it wasn't nearly to the level that the trailers promised. So, and in some of the promotional material, and even the poster, you look at it, it's like, yeah,
that's a horror movie poster.
That's a horror movie poster, but this is more of comedy thriller almost, or
psychological thriller, I think.
Yeah, with some psychological thriller.
Leaned into that, I think.
Right, but it definitely is not marketed the correct way. It's the same way that they did it with Guillermo del Toro's Crimson Peak. They really tried to promote that more like a horror film, and it ended up being a gothic romance film that ended up having just some horror elements in it, but it definitely wasn't a horror film per se versus the way they marketed it as.
I think the problem with Crimson Peak, another movie I love, and friend of the show Miguel just watched that recently for the first time based on my recommendation. You're right, that is a gothic, I'll call it a gothic horror film, but it's not a mainstream what you think of in terms of Guillermo del Toro horror movie. So it's a hard sell. I think that's one of the reasons it is only kind of now being reevaluated and appreciated. With Send Help, I think the issue is it does have kind of horror movie marketing, but I don't know how you sell this movie. And I'm just going to cut right to it. I mean, it is very much comedic, but my main problem with it is it feels like it was a workplace commentary comedy from about 30 years ago. I didn't believe any of the characters. I thought they were all really broad, outdated stereotypes that didn't. I think there was some kind of a message in this film about be fair, be nice to your coworkers, and treat people with respect. But it was so ham-handed that the character work in this movie is just all over the place and inconsistent. And I couldn't root for anybody by the end of the film. And I was very angry in the final moments of this movie. And we do have the spoiler banner up, folks, so just be warned. When Linda Little escapes that island, she has, as we're meant to believe, because we never actually see it, but it's heavily implied, she has murdered her boss, Brad. And now she is on this champion, PGA tour, doing like promotions for her new book. And she's gone from this frumpy, awkward, basically Edward Nygma or from Batman Forever or Jamie Foxx Pamela Isley had more going on in Batman and Robin than Linda Little does in this movie, to a self-assured, very confident, very glamorous woman who at the end, she's driving down the highway and she turns it to the camera And she doesn't give a wink or a nod or anything. She just gives this very accusatory look. I'm like, lady, I don't know who you're looking at. You are a murderer who's exhibited horrible traits during this entire film, and I'm not supposed to root for you. So Sam Raimi and Shannon and Swift, those are the screenwriters who brought us such gems as the Baywatch movie from 2017 and the Friday the 13th remake and Freddy versus Jason. When your best film credit is Freddy versus Jason, I can't, you're going to have to work real hard to make me care. And this movie just didn't do it. I thought it was cheap and very heavy with cheating. And I hated all the Raimiisms in it because I felt like they were there to cover up for the fact that they didn't have enough to say or enough to do with the characters. So they just felt, hey, we're going to have some weird reanimated corpse imagery, or we're going to have the updated version of the Evil Dead woodland fly through, except it's going to be all digital now and look like slop. I'm like, okay, stop, calm down, and tell me a story. And it was incapable of doing that. I needed help to get out of there, but I didn't get it because I don't leave theaters. All right, I've opened the floor.
I think for if you, I don't mean to sound like we're all piling on silly because I know Katie was positive about it. Maybe you should talk first, Katie. Okay.
No. I want to hear you guys.
Okay.
I mean,
well,
it is a Titan fight. So let's all.
I
go for it.
For me, this is one of those movies where, you know, as Ian can attest, I laughed at the right places. I think there's certain parts of it that are very interesting. I do think you've hit a nail on the head in the discussion about, I think this is one of those films that in many respects is hard to write and hard to sell. Now, it shouldn't be hard to sell in the sense that, like, they're stranded on a desert island and they have to make, you know, the life for themselves, and who's going to be able to do that? But to me, with those screenwriters, and aside from their credits, if you were showing this script to majority of people who, you know, at least follow films or have an interest in green lighting, whatever, as hopefully the studio heads do, I'm shocked that somebody there, unless they're all sort of withering idiots, wouldn't have said, the entire plot here is the third act of the Oscar-nominated Triangle of Sadness from a few weeks ago.
Yep, that was my exact feeling.
We cannot do this.
I got that on here. Yeah.
It was done right away, and that's the whole nut here. And that's the whole nut of the third act, which makes, I think, Triangle of Sadness actually kind of really smart and clever in its way. But the other thing is, like, there's other things that they can do in these kind of movies that you have to overcome, whether it's Swept Away, Cast Away, dare I say, Gilligan's Frickin' Island. You know, there are things you have to show and do now because they've been done to death. For example, I'll take the character of Brendan. He's, did I get the name right?
Bradley.
Bradley. I'm sorry, Bradley. There's no arc to him. He's an SOB at the beginning. He's an SOB in the middle. He's an SOB at the end. He may pretend to be better than that, but he's not. Maybe the closest he comes to being a character is he begrudgingly admits that Linda knows what she's doing, that she knows how to cook and hunt and all these things. But there needs to be a better dynamic, because if it's all just about, hey, she can do all these things, murder people, threaten to cut off his testicles, sort of torture them, keep secrets from them that would change them and get them rescued and stuff like that, then he needs to do something other than just sit there like a mope. Because to me, what they're screaming is like, and she's doing all this terrible stuff, and yet we're going to like her more because he's such an SOB. That's a bad screenwriter. That guy should be the first thing they do. Okay, we're going to show her to be this on the island. Now, what happens to him? And he doesn't change. And I just think that's remarkable for an almost 2-hour movie, that he would sit there and still stand on ceremony like, well, I'm your boss, and when we get back, you're fired. Who gives a shit? Nobody would give a rat's ass about any of that. The first time it rains and he's watches his shelter go away because he's so arrogant, after that, he would be like, okay, I'm not your boss anymore. I got very far on daddy's money. What do you need me to do? And to me, the better twist would be like, maybe he does fall in love with her, like he says he does at the end, which he doesn't. We know that. But does he fall in love with her? Do they become really good together? I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's different ways to do it, but you can't do the stuff that's already been done before, whether it's Triangle of Sadness or Gilligan's Island, or literally to have a two-hander where one of the characters is inert. And I have to say, I like the actor quite a bit. In fact, I think that Dylan O'Brien was terrific in Twinless, and he's playing a kind of a macho, unsure of how to sort of change guy there too. But what a performance that was, versus here he's given nothing to do. I'm going to say one last thing, and then I'll probably be quiet for a while and let other people talk, hopefully. But the thing that I actually found most fascinating about this movie are the subtle things. And I don't know if this is Raimi being a more mature director or just happens that way, but it's a little obvious that, Linda's wearing frumpy clothes and she's padded a little bit, and, she's got greasy, ugly hair, which nobody would wear at the office. You'd have more self-awareness. If you're in front of clients and you want to be pronounced, you'd have some self-awareness. This is a company that has to deal with all kinds of people in communications. I think they know this. But I like the subtle shifts in her. Like her hair gets longer. She gets a little bit fitter. She gets a little bit more confident. She's, kind of smiley. She's not telling the corny joke. She's actually making interesting conversation. She admits that she kind of helped her husband, who was a bad drunk, sort of to his death because he was ruining her life and his. Those little subtle things are really interesting in this thing. And Rachel McAdams, that's why she picked the property to do, because she's notorious for turning down stuff. So she saw, oh my goodness, my character changes significantly here. And then, surprisingly, and this is where it's very sly, suddenly we shouldn't be liking her anymore. She's pretty evil. She ignores the boat. She kills two people who are perfectly innocent, especially that boat captain. She finds this house where they could be finding fresh water and bathing and avoiding disease. And, you step on one bad rock and suddenly you're cut up. And then she's got to think, well, I can't bandage it because I can only bandage it with whatever I find here in the survivor world. She should be totally unlikable. And yet the film sort of dares us to say, see, it's all those evil men. That guy who was not fair to her and went with the frat boy in the first 10 minutes, he deserves to die at the end. And I think that's kind of silly because that's not the way the story seems to be going. But the way it's written, ultimately the way Raimi directs it, it sort of does. And I think that's a betrayal of the better material that is there. And then the screenwriters don't make enough of, nor does the director.
Well, I think, and David Fowley, who was supposed to join us tonight, but he wasn't able to make it, I guess. We sat next to each other at a screening recently where this movie came up as a trailer. And, I said, I don't want to see that movie. It looks like the most 2015 movie of 2025. And he said, I'm all in for it. I said, but those of these characters, like everyone here looks like a cartoon character. Like, what am I supposed to latch onto? And Jeff and I were talking about this before the movie, and he said, I don't think you're going to last 10 minutes. And I said, you're probably right. Just about as soon as the movie started, I leaned over to Jeff and I said, 10 seconds. I knew I was in trouble because let's start off with, I said this movie looks like it's, 30, 35 years old. It's a corporate boardroom. Let's just say it takes place in 2025. It's all men. No. Given the publicity, everything stemming from Me Too, to the fact that this is apparently a technology and media and some kind of a public relations company, the press would bury that company. It's not realistic. Also, Linda was all but promised this vice president, the president job by Brad's father, who passed away, played by Bruce Campbell. He's not actually in the film, but there's that portrait in the office, which was kind of a nice touch. But we were also robbed of Bruce Campbell. If that were either Shannon or Swift's call, I want their heads to not have him in that movie. But the idea that you've got a person who is in line for that job and she's still working in a cubicle. No, I mean, I think this is another problem. Shannon Swift and Sam Raimi have been out of touch for far too long to be making a movie about quote unquote everyday people.
Or corporate America, for that matter.
Right. She would at least have an office because everybody in that boardroom, including the one guy, and Jeff, you pointed out perfectly coming out of the theater, who looks like Patrick Bateman from the 1980s with the cheesy, suspenders and striped shirt. I'm like, this is all signals and things that represent things and not actually anything that is relatable to someone who wants to enjoy a story and possibly have some commentary behind it, because it's all ridiculous and out of touch. But am I supposed to believe that all of those executives are also sharing cubicles? None of them have offices in there, and the person who was the boss had said was next in line was going to be, she's in a cubicle. The other issue, I think, is unfortunately in Brad's assessment of Linda Little at the beginning of this film, he's 100% right. You know, she does not have the temperament, the look, the finesse to handle that job, because as much of it is about knowing the reports and the spreadsheets and all the data, it is also about being the face of the company and reaching out to people and being able to be cool and socialize. And there are a lot of, you know, great women in corporate America who can do just that. I've worked for them and with them. So I think the big miss here is there should have been some women in that boardroom, and some of them should have been of Bradley's temperament and doing the, dare I say it, Mean Girls treatment on Linda to say, you just don't have it. And they could be right too. And maybe over the course of this film, when they get to that island, she does, you know, blow up that confidence a bit, but it's like a sudden transformation. I know she's got a lot of books and things on her shelf, but she knows and remembers absolutely everything. There's no moment in this entire film where she's not stumped, like, oh, I forgot how to make this remedy for a bug bite, or I forgot how to do this or that. It's just she knows, she's like a Wikipedia of the Survivor TV show. And then Dylan O'Brien's character, who I like his performance. It's the first thing I think I've really seen him in as an actor, although he's very, you know, highly acclaimed. He's, as Justin mentioned, he's this sniveling, you know, cardboard cutout of the jerky frat guy, even down to his laugh. He has this, it's like out of a TV show. You know, he will run off from a scene when he thinks he's gotten one over on Linda, and he'll literally go like that sniveling little laugh. I'm like, honestly, guys, what am I watching here? I don't know. And I couldn't get invested in any of it. And there are moments where Linda hunts a boar or a boar hunts her, and there's this blood spraying out of the boar's head, and then there's more blood, and there's a fifth geyser pouring out of it. I'm like, yeah, that's cute, but, you know, I'm sorry, Rachel McAdams is not Bruce Campbell, and this is not an Evil Dead movie. What am I watching here? That's the question that was my constant refrain for the entire almost 2 hours of this movie. And I'm sorry, the moment that I wanted to walk out, in case everyone's wondering, is the bit where Linda, and it's part of this is in the trailer, it's alluded to at least. She drugs Brad, gets him paralyzed, sitting up against a tree, and then pretends to castrate him. And I hate to be that guy, but I'll be that guy. What if the roles were reversed? Is there any world in which a guy does that to a woman and it's okay? And I know there's like this whole thing of like, well, men deserve it. Like, no, we don't. And we don't think it's cute either. Just as we wouldn't find it cute if he was, you know, doing some kind of a surgery on her, you know, nether parts. It's just, it's gross.
And that's also derived from another movie. It's the major plot point of Hard Candy, a movie about a child molester who picks up a young girl, starring Patrick Wilson and Ellen Page from about, 15 years ago, Katie? Mm-hmm. You're shaking your head or so?
Maybe longer.
It's longer than that. It's
yeah, it was before Juno and before Watchmen and some of those kind of things. But here's the thing. Point there, so even that's derivative.
Here's the thing. I think if you're going to have that scene, and I am not opposed to that being in a movie on principle, I just think you have to have some principle behind it and not just have it be like a ha, isn't that funny? Don't you deserve it? Because again, I don't know if this character does, because one of the other character problems in this movie is Bradley, he starts off bad, but then he's kind of humanized, and then he goes back to being bad again. And there's a wonderful scene, a great scene, where they're having a campfire and they're kind of breaking down their walls, and he's talking about how his dad was a jerk and always working, and his mom didn't love him and all this other stuff, and that's how it kind of turned out bad. Mm-hmm. And that's great, except I don't know if any of that was true, because it sounds like it was a story he was making up to lower her defenses as he made this raft to get off the island, which I don't know how she let him out of her sight long enough for him to do all that. But also, at no point does she question, that doesn't sound like the dad that, I don't remember what the dad's name was. Let's just say it was Bruce. Yeah. At no point does she say, that's not the Bruce I know. He was very nurturing to me. Or maybe if he was like that, that could be a subplot or room for growth of like, why did Bruce shower more affection on someone who worked for him at the office than his own son? Did he recognize Brad as a bad seed? Was it something to do with work being more important to him than family? I don't know. There's tons of great ideas and material to explore in a movie that show up here, but it's all flushed down the toilet. So you can have a zombie fiance jump scare. And I didn't want any of it. Okay, I'm done monologuing. Katie, jump in.
I mean, I think you make a lot of great points, and there are definitely some of the things that you said that I picked up on in the film. One of the major things was when Linda had the report that she spent countless days and hours on and stuff like that, and the way she put her name on it was with a Post-it note. I don't know anyone who crafts something like that and does not put their name on it with the date and year, so you have that in your computer, and also so that can be you can go back on when you're looking at your bosses and here's this report that I gave you and all that stuff. And the fact that Donovan just like took the Post-it and threw it in the trash, like, oh, I spent hours on that, and then she didn't do anything. They definitely, the writers definitely made sure that they wanted to make Linda an likable character. Like, she just has character. She's not a people person. She doesn't know how to make, conversation just out of the blue. It's obviously very awkward for her. The fact that she is eating at her desk is just
tuna fish sandwich.
That tuna fish sandwich that's has a lot of onions in it, by the way, because when she was making that, doesn't make much sense. But then you also don't need, she's doing it. She obviously doesn't seem to have any friends at the office when they're talking about karaoke, and she goes home to her parakeet and stuff like that. But you also see her struggles with like that scene where Bradley and Linda have that bonding session at the campfire. That was one of my favorite scenes, mainly because when she was going through her story, they didn't cut to like, this is what it looked like and this is what it's like. You know what? Let the audience like see that in their mind themselves. Did she say she killed her husband? No. Did she say, look, if he wants to drink and drive, you know what? That's up to him. I used to save him. I needed to save myself. And I mean, that's not necessarily killing. And it's like, I get it. And I mean, I think one of the reasons why that scene worked for me was because of Rachel McAdams. Like she is, I think she's a fantastic actress. And, like Jeff said, they purposely did stuff to her to really not bring out the like shine that she has. I mean, and I don't think this wasn't all of a sudden, the whole thing. Like someone said, when she's on the island, it's like, this is just like, she had her hair down. She's like at the happiest that she can. And I would say, Ian, though, when you said that she's memorized all these things, she's been trying to get on Survivor, I feel like, for years. There's going to be a plethora of knowledge that, because at any point they could like call her up and do that. That to me was not something I thought was a fault, because maybe I have some books and maybe I have some stuff, in case there's a zombie apocalypse that I'm like ready to go and all that stuff. I'm not going to say where, when, or how I have this knowledge and what I have stored away and all that stuff. And
well, okay, but here's the thing.
Know where I live.
She's already you're already in a bunker.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Just once, just have her be unsure of what she's doing or forget something or be like, damn, if only I had my reference book, or I have a whole survival guide on my phone, but it was, lost in the crash or something like that, because it's just too perfect and there's no conflict there.
She kind of had that when she trusted Bradley, and then he, gave her that,
octopus.
Yeah.
Not the octopus. She gave her
the octopus.
Yeah. We know
the flower. Yeah.
He had a little of that moment when the storm destroyed the thing, and she said, I shouldn't have built it so close to the beach. But then they go back to the beach, and that's where they're still operating from, as opposed to a cave or someplace.
Yeah.
deeper.
That's-
Well, they
That-
built
that's-
it on
that's-
higher ground, but not in the cave. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, but that's a judgment call. I'm talking
Right.
about the specifics of something that she needed to put
Mhm.
together or accomplish. Because I mean, we are all experts in various fields, but there's never been a time, I promise you, that we haven't been like, I forgot, or I got to look that
Yeah.
up, or just give me a second,
Yeah.
or even just messing up. I mean, that whole thing of
True.
Bradley serving her the stuff. I mean, she trusted him to make. She had been teaching him to make food, so she trusted him. But again, I don't know why. And Katie, I want to go back to something real quick about that boardroom scene. You mentioned the thing about the post-it note on the reports. Again, it is now 2026.
Oh yeah.
Paper reports are not a thing. You would send that to their iPads or to the laptops.
I will debate on that. Depending
Yeah,
on
actually,
the,
yeah.
I've got execs. I have worked in offices to where you are pushing to be electronic, but they want a hard copy to write notes on, regardless of the technology of 2016 or 2026. There are companies with execs who want that in their hot little hand, regardless of you doing it electronically, sending electronically to their laptops. I was just at a meeting last week where they were doing handouts of the exact slides that were on the presentation on the screen. So as far as
Same.
that goes,
But
that
to
I
both-
believe.
Mark,
all of your points-
here's the thing. There are people who are holdouts, but we're meant to believe this is a cutting edge company, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the people are young. I think the oldest person in that office is probably Dennis Haysbert. Now, there might be people who want the physical copy, but those are going to be exceptions. And that should have been a point like, I've sent this to I've put this up on the network. You can pull it down, and here are a couple of copies for the old timers who want the physical copy. It would have been a point.
Or
It's
to
just, again,
previously Ian, too.
it's an anachronism. And I understand there are going to be cases, but if you walk into any of the Fortune 500 companies, you're not going to be seeing this nonsense as a matter of course.
To Katie's point, if you don't mind me saying, Kate, maybe you're going to say it, but she would have given herself credit on that. You don't prepare all this stuff, and like the only credit is the post-it so somebody can steal it from her. They would have had an electronic version probably simultaneous with the hard copy so they can watch it on their monitor,
Right. Yep.
have it for 20 people who are in 20 different cities on Zoom,
Mhm.
and then also be able to write on it if you want to take notes on it. But to the ultimate theme, though, that both you guys, all three of us, I think all four of us have said is those kind of things hurt a movie, And I think those little things are where you like, there's a lot of good here, but then there's a lot of that stupid stuff that they could have fixed. I'm just going to tell you one quick story, I promise. I did the Butterfinger commercials with The Simpsons, and we worked with one of the producers of the show. And I asked her one time, I said, this is back many, many years ago, and The Simpsons was great. They hadn't even reached 10 seasons. They were, I think, at 7 or 8. And she said, they send 2 people away to write a script. There's like 20 writers. They put 2 people in a team, so they have somebody to counter off of. Then they bring the script in, and they go through the entire reader's room and go over every single line. They'll read a line of stage direction. Homer enters the thing and scratches his butt. And somebody will say, they will stop, the reader stops and say, okay, can we make that funnier for Korea to animate? He scratches his butt like he's Mary Poppins fondling the parrot head of her parasol. Oh, okay, that's funnier. Boom. And they go through that. Does anybody do that in these scripts anymore? This is my number one complaint about this. There's so much media out there. There's so many remakes. There's so much stuff. And somebody says, a post-it note on that thing is good enough. Is that really good enough? Is that how corporate America is? Or she's going to say, well, we can't go over to that side of the island because there's bad stuff over there. What the first thing he'd want to do is like, what's over at that island? And why does she come back sometimes clean? There's a scene where she's taking a shower under this gorgeous waterfall, and she would come back from that looking fresh as a daisy. And wouldn't he be curious about where's that waterfall? We never see her offer that to him. These are questions that screenwriters and directors have to ask themselves. They prep a film for 10 months before they've even put one single shoot day on the calendar. And this is the best we get. It just drives me nuts because it's easily fixed.
To that point, Jeff, I mean, we're kind of all over the place with this movie because this movie is sort of all over the place. But 2 things. I want to talk about the house. But before that, talking to the kind of cartoonish nature of this movie and not being able to take it seriously, there's a sort of montage where Linda she's built like this crazy shelter, and she's got like a little sushi bar and all this other, it's very Gilligan's Island. And Bradley is helping her, but then they get into a tiff and he goes off on his own, like, I don't need you. And there's a montage of him trying to do things on his own and failing spectacularly. And one of those, he's like sawing into a tree, and there's all these black bugs buzzing around him in a swarm, kind of meant to be like hornets or something like that. I'm thinking, oh, this is not going to end well for him. But no, they cut to the next bit of the montage and he's fine. No blisters, no welts, no like crying or swelling on the beach. He's just, or poisoning. He's just fine. It doesn't mean anything. It's just there for a gag. And again, gags are fine if you're talking about the Evil Dead. And maybe the part of this is the marketing of me going and expecting some kind of a thriller or a more legitimate movie with a little bit of Raimi twist. But this is Raimi twists with, the skin suit of misery on a beach. I'm not even talking about the Stephen King book. But let's talk about the house. I keep wanting to call her Rachel. That's how much I think of Rachel McAdams in this movie. Linda. I keep saying Rachel McAdams because I love her and she's great here too. All of the actors are great. They're just underserved, I think, by the material, and it's really frustrating. But she points to this rock formation on the a distant kind of like cliff in this jungle and says, "Don't go over there. It's all thorn bushes and it's extremely hazardous and you'll die." That's just a cover, because on the other side of that giant X stone is a amazing, probably billionaire's mansion that's like cut into the rock face in the jungle, and she's discovered it and she's been going there and hanging out, and Brad discovers it, and they end up in this big bloody confrontation where they're stabbing and shooting each other, and that's the climactic bit where there's a final double cross, because both of them throughout the course of this movie fall in and out of like and even possibly love with each other, and they're both so stupid as to never think that the other person is trying to get one over on them until the final confrontation. They've been through this like 8 times. She takes the golf club, she basically kills him with it, and then we cut to the golf tour at the end, as I mentioned earlier. Who owned that house? Did they ever come back and say, hey, it looks like there's been a murder here? Did Linda do some amazing forensics cleanup to never have her fingerprints? I mean, she was rescued from that island somehow.
Well, they mentioned how she was rescued in the interview that they do to her, the reporter. And that's supposed to be the in joke in there. It's come back around as she built a raft and they found her on a raft. The reporter specifically mentions it was great and amazing. We've saved you from that raft. And you 1 year ago when you were discovered, when she was so adamant about the raft not being a solution.
Yes, she was rescued on a raft.
Yes. In
an area where there was a billionaire who had a home there. A billionaire who at some point probably came back home and discovered it looks like someone's been murdered in my house.
It depends on how long ago he went, though. Some billionaires and some folks have houses that they've never been in or have been in maybe once a year. So,
but Mark, no, that might be true, but they have staff. They have people who come check up on it to make sure that it's not been robbed or ransacked. What I'm saying is there would be someone in the course of that year to go to that place and find the crime scene that's happened. By the way, there's also a high-profile news story about a woman who was rescued on a raft very close to here, an American woman who went down in a plane crash. And guess what? By coincidence, the rotting corpse that's sitting here, unless she went and buried the body, there's too many questions that the screenwriters don't care to ask. Like, that guy was on that plane with that woman who was rescued. Did she kill him? Because it looks like there's foul play. If not in terms of the corpse, then in terms of all the fingerprints and the blood that's all over this place. Help me out here.
I was going to say I'm not defending the ending. I was just stating the fact of that they did mention the raft. Now, me personally, I did not like the ending of her being the CEO. I didn't care for the fact that the house was there. I think it takes away from what they were trying to do with the Rachel McAdams characters. What I was trying to say is that I'm not defending the ending. No. My son and I talked about it, actually. It's up until the third act, both him and I actually rather were enjoying it. Even with its cliches and stuff, I was finding some things interesting. I was finding some entertainment in it. And what you end up getting is exactly what crossed my mind, was the ending to Triangle of Sadness with this. And that took away so much from her character, because they spent 2/3 of the film establishing that she's the survivor, establishing that survivor is her whole life. I didn't have a problem with her necessarily not forgetting things, because this is a woman who has dedicated her entire life. And since she doesn't really have a life outside of her home, I fully believed she was an expert in survival. Up until they show the montage of her when she discovered the house, and suddenly she's like, oh, and she's like opening the refrigerator like she's saved. And I'm like, you're totally removing the element that is supposed to make her better than Bradley.
Yeah.
Now you've made her a character that you don't care to like. And the thing is, there only had to be some minor tweaks to this script to have it end a lot better, to where you actually are rooting for Liddy by the end of it. The problem is they thought that, we're going to make her not so likable when the fiance shows up and she's reluctant to help, but she's taking them. Rather than implying that she pushed them both off the cliff, I would have at least put her in at least a little bit of a different category if she was one who didn't act and they both end up falling off the cliff while he was trying to save her.
Yes.
Then while you go, yes, she could have done something. At the same time, you realize why she didn't, but they fall over, and it doesn't make her the actual killer. That this is then implied that she actually pushed them off. She killed a helpless boat person, and then
the script also wants to eat its cake and have it too. And I dare say, getting back to Raimi, this is one of his faults in it. They film it so you don't know. Bullshit. Yeah. Let us see that she does whatever your idea is, or the actual script. Show us that, and let us as an audience go like, wow, do I keep rooting for Linda, or is she suddenly a bad person?
They did show it. They came back to it,
but they don't show it in the real time when it happens. It happens 10 minutes later when she thinks she sees a ghost coming out of the water at the end. I think it's a cheat. It's like, okay, if we're making the turn now where Linda decides, okay, I've already seen the boat and I'm not going to rescue myself because I like the fact that I've got this power here. I'm starting to question her a little bit there. Then this happens, but they don't show it right away. And clearly they wanted to keep her on the audience on her side up until the end. And that's also one of the reasons that there's no arc for Brad, because he's a line shit from the beginning to the end. And I think this film, like I said, is trying to have it both ways. The better story, even if you want to just be pure to what we're sort of seeing here, is like Linda gets power and she goes crazy and she turns into Brad. She's now privileged. She's the girl who's the rich one because she knows how to do it all on the island, and she's almost like a Nepo baby, but she's earned it. But she's just as bad a boss to him as he was to her. That would be an interesting story. Or she'll do anything to hang on to her thing, which was right out of Triangle of Sadness. But what they do is they want to keep us with her, but by withholding information. And I think that's a cheat.
Yeah, I mean, the bit where it blacks out, where we quote unquote don't know what happened. I knew exactly what happened.
Oh, we all did. We all
right, and that's
the film doesn't want to show it. Why doesn't the film show it?
Well, because the screenwriters think that it's going to be a surprise, and it's going to be a surprise to someone like, gee, I wonder. This is my first movie I've ever seen before.
But see, the implication, Ian, is if the screenwriters had balls, they would have said, you know what, we're going to show it, and in that moment, we're going to challenge the audience, like, still with us, still with her.
Or lean into that gray, like she acted too slowly. She had a moment of hesitation that could have saved them. But here's how I would have ended the movie, because Mark, you're absolutely right. Once they establish that there's a house, I'm like, would have been great is if she swings that golf club and she kills Bradley, and the owner shows up right at that moment to witness her committing a murder. And you know who that owner is? Survivor host Jeff Probst.
That's a great ending. That's a great ending.
That would have been fun. No, I mean,
I love that.
You know, Katie, your positives. I mean, I'm all with the positives too. I was into this film when I realized that it wasn't going to actually be the horror when we spend a lot of time in that office area. I'm like, okay, this is the type of film that we're going to get. And I kind of rolled with it. And I liked it. I liked Liddy. She reminded me a bit of Selena Kyle before she becomes Catwoman in many ways. You know, and I liked that character too. I like to see that arc. And I like to see the survivor part. And I'm with you, Katie. That scene around the campfire where they're supposedly having the heart-to-heart, I think is the best scene in here. And I wish there would have been more of those moments. You know, but
and
for me, it doesn't.
Moments, Mark, it could have changed this film from a decent horror thriller into a very unsettling psychological thriller that demanded more of the audience and more of the filmmakers rather than just, well, we'll take this from Gilligan's Island, we'll take that from Survivor, we'll take that from Triangle of Sadness.
Yeah. What were you saying, Mark?
Oh, I was just going to say that the ending, they don't stick the one ending with this. The script writers for this borrowed elements from about a dozen different movies and just patched it together with it. They're thinking they're very smart. I'm not even talking about I'm not even talking about Raimi. I'm talking about the screenwriters.
Right.
The screenwriters think this is a very smart, very satirical, script, but they just borrow stuff from films that had done it better and they piece it together. I honestly think in the hands of another director and your cast being different, this film is even rougher. I think Raimi, at least the talent of Raimi and your cast in here, help make the most of a very poorly written script. And
it's the difference between VOD original. Oh, we lost Jeff. And a name brand box office movie. You're absolutely right, Mark. And also talking about taking elements from other films. It makes sense that these are the guys who did the Friday the 13th remake, because that was just like a mashup of parts 1 through 4 and not a particularly good one. Although Shannon and Swift in that movie did give us the all-time winner of a phrase, perfect nipple symmetry.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know. But it's just, it's one of those things where, and my son and I, he's become my movie pal. I love it. Trust me, it warms my heart. He goes with me to pretty much everything.
Does he get nachos too? Does he do?
No, he just gets the soda. He gets the soda. See, we get the combo, and that way I get the nacho combo. He gets the soda from the combo, and then I get some water, and it works out for everyone.
But does he have the soda thing like you have the nacho thing? Like, which is going to be better?
No, he doesn't. But he does have a letterbox, and he is quite more of an actual film critic than his father, who is, I don't know what he is, but I think Rachel McAdams. I think the cast saves this. I liked Rachel McAdams, and Katie, you could correct me, but it almost feels like I'm wondering how much of this she rewrote for herself. Because
true, I could see that. And I mean, I think you are spot on with the dozens of films this is portraying, because we've already mentioned American Psycho. There's Alive, there's Misery, there's Triangle of Sadness. I mean, there's a lot of different films that they put into this film to make this not really original. And one of the major, and we haven't even discussed this, it's the fact that Linda doesn't see one boat, but she sees 2 boats. And these are not big boats. Obviously, there's a billionaire who has a house that maybe he visits once every 3 years. I know, Ian, you were saying this stuff. It's like, what about the staff? And the thing is, when I think about that, if there's a dead body, I think of American Psycho. It's like, we've got to clean this crap up, because if we lose this job, we're out of a job forever. So who cares? But I mean, there's also 2 other people who died on that island that are never to be found again. So
and they don't talk about it.
But
they don't even mention them.
Yeah. There's also the fact that these are small boats. Where are the islands that they are coming from?
Yeah,
I
they're
mean,
bringing in
if you're in the
supplies.
middle of the ocean, you're not going to take those little putt-putt boats that maybe have, a Sprite and a water and a tuna fish sandwich. Like, okay, let's look, there's got to be a bigger vessel but she sees that not once, but twice.
Right.
So that's the thing. It's like that automatically, I mean, we've talked about that, but the reveal was not a reveal to me at all.
No.
I think someone, when I watched this at a screening, like, oh, I didn't think that. I'm like, oh, okay.
You didn't.
Katie,
The minute,
you know what it would
whole
have been?
the minute she said, "Go, go,"
yeah,
the
you
minute-
didn't. This thing, you didn't think that there was. Okay, all right.
You know what it would have been,
good to know.
Katie?
That's good to know.
It would have been a plane. There would have been planes going overhead.
Yeah, I know. And instead, you've got like
that, and they would have noticed that within the first 5 days, probably.
And here's the thing is, if you look at the way the script is set up and they set up the characters, you don't need that triangle of sadness ending. We've already talked about, we've established that she's a survivor. And in fact, she mentions at least a couple of times that she is more happy on the island than she's ever been at her real life.
Yeah.
You could have still had the battle between them, have her end up either accidentally or specifically killing, her boss, maybe imply it, whichever. But then you could even have cut out the house scene at the end and have them, if you still want to do that coda at the end, which I don't think you should, that tacked on at the end that she becomes a CEO, mention the raft, you could just take out the house part altogether, make it still a deserted island, make it that these two end up fighting. You could take out the fiance showing up, because that adds absolutely nothing to the conflict between Bradley and Lydia, because because it takes nothing. It doesn't add anything, because as we talked about earlier too, Bradley has no arc. He's still an asshole, pardon my French, all the way through the film trying to get off the island. So you could have literally ended this with her either just staying on the island after he dies, or if you do the coda of the raft, it makes sense. She made her own raft, but not with the billionaire house there where you said someone could find her. They just found her on a raft afterwards. If you wanted to play the angle of her going back and getting the money, there's ways that they could have tightened this up, that there's a good film here instead of, for me, an okay film. But these guys never bothered to actually try to take it in an interesting direction. They tried to do it as a gimmick.
What if, to your point, Mark, what if they had gotten rid of the house altogether, and she ultimately kills Brad because he's tried to kill her and tried to pull one over on her and escape and all that kind of stuff, and then she's alone, and that's exactly like how she wants it. She's capable. She's her own boss. And here's the coda you could do. It's 30 years later. Somebody else is washed ashore in a plane crash, and they're like, "Oh, thank God you're here. You're going to be like the boss of me because you know what you're doing." And then she's got her promotion. I mean, you could have done that as a bookend to what she was really after, because she was fine without anybody, without just her bird. But you're right. I think, as we've talked about since this podcast began, this is not written by writers. This is not written by storytellers. This is people who have written sequels, and they're writing screenplays about other screenplays about other screenplays, and that's what this is. Hey, I saw this once on Gilligan's Island. Hey, I saw this once on Swept Away. Hey, I saw this just 3 years ago in Triangle of Sadness. That's not screenwriting.
Well, I'll tell you what is screenwriting, and this is something that I thought about on the train ride back from the screening. There is nothing in this movie that is smarter or better than a movie that came out last January that we all in this panel adore and that not enough people have seen. It's called Companion.
Yep.
It's the exact same movie with the exact same point. I mean, the mechanics are different. One takes place at a cabin in the woods, and the other one takes place mostly on a beach. They both end with the main character driving down a highway, having a moment that kind of wraps things up.
Yes.
But Companion feels honest. It's got a character that you can root for that's been through a lot of stuff. It also has some pretty spectacular, creative gore effects. that are outrageous, but they're not over the top, and they're also very believable. Yeah, I really don't like this movie, and I think I'm glad that I've seen Companion, and I was mixed on Triangle of Sadness, but I still like it better than Send Help. I think the problem is when you've got examples of movies that are really in a league of their own, if you're going to try and tackle the same material, and maybe it's not fair because this movie would have been in development concurrent to, probably Companion, their separate studios and all that stuff. So maybe they thought they were doing something really smart. But when you're out here in the marketplace with movies kind of pitted against each other, you better put your best foot forward always. And this stuff just doesn't cut it. But that's me. And I was serious earlier when I said that Sam Raimi should stop directing things that he doesn't write. Because I think that there is that kind of gonzo spirit in the movies that he puts together kind of for himself, for his friends, that does feel like that 19-year-old kid running around the woods of Michigan, being innovative and hammering boards together to create their own kind of like steady cams and all that stuff. That's just, he's decades on now. I get the feeling he still has that youthful desire to be young and dangerous, but the material works against him, I think, at every turn here. And it's unfortunate. That's my own Triangle of Sadness.
I'm glad that despite a trailer that I saw after the film, which actually made me very, very mad, where they made this seem like it was some sort of like Blue Lagoon, there's going to be, a romance brewing between the two of them. Yeah, I saw a trailer that did that. And I was like, what the hell is this? I'm very glad that they steered clear of that.
Yeah.
And yes, there were some times where it's like he was in the ocean naked and she was like, oh, and then walked away. But it's like, and when she was like, yeah, I'll give you some food, but you need to do something for me. And then when he was going to pull it, she's like, no, not that. I'm not like you. And I'm like, these are things.
That was a nice moment. Yeah.
Yeah. I like those things I like that they didn't do that. I felt like they were possibly going to, like when they were there was a nice moment in the cave where it's like, we need our, the warmth of our bodies. It's like, and I'm like, good. Don't do a kissing scene. Please don't. That's just no, it's not believable. It's just tawdry. And it's like, come on, let's not do that. Plus, he's still a shit. Like, there's nothing about this that would make him attractive. I don't care how long you've been on that island. No. Find a coconut and an octopus. I don't know. Do something other than Bradley. That's not even.
Maybe it's Jeffrey Epstein who owns that house.
Yeah. At least they did not do that in the film. But I did enjoy it. I mean, I went through the things that I think they should have done better. Again, the whole thing with the boat thing was like, that doesn't make much sense to me, because even if you've got the billionaire house there, the people, his staff, still have to get there from some other thing. Like, so is there a yacht there? Those are things that really don't make sense. I don't want to spend that much time thinking about it. But I mean, the chemistry between Rachel McAdams and Dylan O'Brien, I thought was fantastic. And with the Raimi moments, with the giant boar, and then that nasty cockroach that was just still so nasty, and that little moment when she had the tuna fish salad on her face, and then he's talking to her, and it's like he's got the cockroach on her face. I'm like, okay, that's cute. I like those kind of things. So I enjoyed this film. I think, is it a very January film? There's some things about it that make it a very January film, but yeah, I did like it.
Katie, if I were to get a blurb on a poster, I would steal what you just said and say, this is a very January movie.
It's a very January film.
Yeah, and I'm kind of in the same boat. I enjoyed most of it. I still gave it a middle of the road rating. I found enjoyment in it. It wasn't the movie I was expecting. I'm going to put it that way. It really wasn't. But once I realized that, I settled in and enjoyed most of it. I think there's a far better film buried in here, but I enjoyed it for the most part. Would I watch it again? Probably not. But I think,
which you don't want to have to say about a Sam Raimi movie. That's
you
really,
don't.
It's not
you
good.
Yeah. But in general, I gave it a 3 or 3.5 or whatever, middle of the road. I I think fans of Raimi who are, wanting to see him come back, you can see it. It's not necessarily a Raimi film, but there's some Raimi-isms in there, and you can find some enjoyment in it. It's just by the end of it, you're just going to go, that's how you end it. Because if you ever, Jeff could probably attest to it, and we've talked about it on here and other shows too. Even if you have a mediocre film, even if the script was mediocre, if you can nail that ending, like really like punch that ending, people are going to come out of it at least thinking a little bit more positive about the film than if you whiff the ending, yet you have a stronger film at the beginning of it. And that's what it is for me. 2/3 of this film, I really dug. When they went to where I was hoping they wouldn't go, from there on with it just like, wow, it just kept dropping down for me further and further. And then by the end,
right down that cliff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, I think we've all said our piece. We've all remained civil, unlike the commenters. And I'm sorry, folks, I have not looked at the comments since about 5 minutes after you started the show, because as I mentioned, the band function doesn't seem to be working that well here on the old StreamYard. So I got to look and see what that's about.
Yeah, it doesn't disappear, the messages. Depends on how fast they go in. I'm not sure how long it takes for that to kick in.
We did have to let a few people go because, once again, we're only going to engage with people who want to talk about the movie at hand or talk about movies in general, and do so respectfully and have something to contribute. So unfortunately, because I know we have had some great commenters and recurring folks in the comments talking about movies, but for the safety of my sanity and the well-being of my guest panelists, I have not looked at those all hour. I don't
know. I just feel offended. No one asked me if I had an OnlyFans page.
What?
So
I'll have to go look at those later. But anyway,
did they ask if I had an OnlyFans page? Really?
It's the hat, Katie. It's the hat.
It's the hat.
Really?
All right. Well, so we're going to leave it here, folks. But we'll be back next week, not on Tuesday. It's going to be Wednesday, because I actually have something going on Tuesday night. Believe it or not, I've got a weird social thing happening. I don't know what's going on. Wednesday, I don't know what we're talking about. I'm not even sure what's coming out this weekend that would be worth talking about. But we'll figure out something, and we'll be back here next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Central. Talking about, Katie, you've got an idea?
Oh, you know what's coming out this weekend?
No.
Luc Besson's Dracula.
Is that this weekend?
Yeah, it's this weekend.
It's the 6th. And you know what's coming out next weekend that I really want to talk to you guys about?
Is it Don't Die or whatever? Yeah. I know that the Sam Rockwell one.
Yeah.
That might have to be a separate show, because I want to talk about Wuthering Heights.
Oh, yes.
I'm reading the novel right now, and oh boy, howdy.
Oh, damn it, Ian.
Look,
you and your reading, and your, knowledge of books, and making sure they're just like
I make up for it. I make up for it. I don't read except comics, so
I'm not reading anything. All I'm gonna read is the steamy scenes between Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi. That's all I'm gonna read.
Well,
there.
I don't know how steamy Emily Bronte got, but it took me 5 chapters to finally decide that I could read the entire book, because it's dense. Anyway, we'll be back next week talking about probably Luc Besson's Dracula, come to think of it. But join us next Wednesday. I am Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat. We have Katie Glidewell, the blonde in front, Mark the Movie Man Krawcheck of Special Mark Productions, and Jeff York of The Establishing Shot and Pipeline Artists. Thank you all so much, and thank you for those who tuned in throughout the hour. Thanks for those who, I assume someone left a halfway decent comment in the we appreciate the engagement. For those who didn't, we don't. So until next time, whenever that is, whatever that is, thank you very much, and take care.